Stop.
Okay. Okay, Assalamualaikum and a very good day. So we are from Group 5 and today we will be presenting our e-portfolio lesson plan. Okay, so our group member are Gauss Yuwen, Nur Shazrina binti Asmadi, Hanif Akilah binti Jamiluddin and Nur Imran Izani bin Halid. So next we will move on to the first lesson plan. Okay, so this is the first lesson plan that we will be presenting, which is a Form 2 lesson plan. So the theme for this lesson plan is People and Culture, where we use Unit 7, which is Journey, and it focuses on listening and speaking skills. So the content standard for the main skill is Understand Meaning in a Variety of Familiar Contexts, and its learning standard is Understand independently the main ideas in simple, longer text on a range of familiar topics. Meanwhile, the content standard for the complementary skill is which is speaking is communicate information, ideas, opinions, and feelings intelligibly on family topics, and its learning standard is ask about and explain key information from simple text. So the learning objective for this lesson plan are to identify the sound and mode of various transportation and to identify and analyze various type of unusual transportation around the world. So the success criteria for this lesson plan are students are considered successful if they are able to identify at least 8 out of 10 sound and mode of various transportation and they are able to identify and analyze at least 4 out of 6 type of unusual transportation around the world. So next is the our differentiation strategy is strategy 4, which is differentiate by the outcome expected from pupils, and our cross-curricular elements is creativity and innovation. So the pre-lesson is the teacher grades pupils, teacher asks the student what the vehicle they ride to school, then the teacher asks the student what other vehicle they know, and the teacher will introduce the 3 basic mode of transportation, which are land, water, and air. Then the teacher will introduce the lesson and objective to the class. So for the lesson development, the teacher plays audio on the sound of various transportation and asks the students to guess the name of the transport and its mode. Then the teacher asks the student to answer with their reasoning. Then the students are divided into 6 groups with 5 members in each group. Then show picture of various transportation around the world. Then the student need to discuss in the group what they observe from the pictures. And then the teacher will randomly pick a group to describe what they saw from the pictures and let pupils explain their answer. So next, the teacher will give feedback on pupils' answer. And for the post lesson, the teacher will ask pupils to summarize the topic that they learned today on that lesson. Then the teacher asks people to finish the worksheet prepared after class and the teacher will present the answer by the next class, which we will see the worksheet in the attachment. Next, the teacher will state the moral value of the lesson and recaps the lesson. So the HOTS in this lesson plan is evaluation and the teaching and learning strategy we use is pupil-centeredness and cooperative learning. So next, we will see the attachment. So this is the attachment, the material that we will use during the lesson. We have the audio and the pictures that we will show, and below it is the worksheet for the students. Next, I will pass to the second presenter.
Okay, so I'll be presenting next. I'll be presenting on our metacognitive lesson plan. So first of all, we'll start with what is metacognitive. Metacognitive strategies refers to methods used to help students understand the way they learn. In other words, it means processes designed for students to think about their thinking. Teachers who use metacognitive strategies can positively impact students who have learning disabilities by helping them to develop an appropriate plan for learning information which can be memorized and eventually routine. As students become aware of how they learn, they will use these processes to efficiently acquire new information and consequently become more of an independent thinker. Numerous studies have shown positive effects of metacognitive learning, and metacognitive learning has two aspects, which is function and knowledge and belief about cognitive processes. Based on these two aspects, we have prepared a lesson plan that covers listening and speaking skill for teaching English as second language. So moving on to our lesson plan. So this is a lesson plan for 60 minutes and the theme will be people and culture covering unit 2, ready for anything for form 4 student. The focus skill is listening and speaking, and then the focus is on vocabulary and speaking. The content standard for the main skill speaking is 2.1, communicate information, ideas, opinions, and feelings intelligibly on familiar topics. And then the complementary skill will be listening, which is 1.1, understand meaning in a variety of familiar contexts. And then moving on to our learning standard. For the main skill, we choose 2.1.1, explain simple content on familiar topic from what they read and hear. And then for the complementary skill, student need to understand independently the main ideas in extended extent on a wide range of familiar topics. For our learning objective, by the end of the lesson, pupil will be able to understand the meaning of the video about expression of emotion. And then second, they will be able to identify the answer for the questions in the worksheet given based on the video about expression of emotion. And then three, they will be able to describe characteristic of different profession in the textbook in page 26. And then moving on to our success criteria. We'll start with weak student. First, at least 10 out of 30 students understand the meaning of the video. And then second would be at least 23 out of 30 students are able to identify one one over three 1/3 questions in the worksheet based on the video. And then number three would be uh, 10 out of 30 students are able to describe the characteristic using at least one phrases of different profession. And then moving on to our intermediate, at least 15 out of 30 students understand the meaning of the video. And then at least 23 out of 30 students are able to identify two out of three questions in the worksheet given. And then number three, 15 out of 30 students are able to describe characteristic using at least three phrases of different profession. For advanced, the first one will be at least 25 out of 30 students able to understand the meaning of the video. And then the second one, at least 23 out of 30 students are able to identify 3/3 questions in the worksheet given. And then the third one would be 23 out of 30 students are able to describe the characteristic using at least five phrases of different profession. Okay, moving on to our cross curricular element. And the moral value is to respect ourselves by expressing our emotions and feelings. The differentiation strategies is strategy to differentiate by the task pupils are given. Okay, so I'll be passing to the next presenter.
Okay, thank you. I will continue the lesson activities for metacognitive approach. In the pre-lesson, it accounts for 10 minutes. Teacher first greets pupils and activates pupils' prior knowledge by asking how they express their feelings and emotions when they are depressed or excited. This is to improve their critical thinking. And then teacher asks pupils to answer the questions in the Padlets. Teacher then randomly picks 3 pupils to share their answers and explain today's lesson's learning objectives. And in the lesson development, it accounts for 40 minutes, and there are 2 activities. For listening activities, first, the teacher plays a video regarding the topic of facial expressions, and then distribute the worksheet regarding the topic, gives students 5 minutes to answer the worksheet, and then picks a few students to share their answers in front of the class. And for the next activity is for speaking. Teacher divides the class into 6 groups of 5 students each, and then ask the students to look at the pictures on the page 26 of the textbook and discuss them in groups for 10 minutes. Teacher then randomly picks 3 students from different groups to describe and explain the characteristics of the professions described in the 4 pictures. And teacher allows all the students to rethink their answers based on the supported phrases by using the sentences provided in the right column of the textbook. And the teacher corrects students' answers by providing additional examples. For the post lesson is for 10 minutes. Teacher picks 3 students to summarize today's lesson and then states the moral value of the lesson. After that, the teacher instructs students to complete a short reflection on the topic and based on what they have learned from today's lesson within 400 words. And teacher ends the lesson. The hosts of the lesson are evaluation and analysis. The teaching and learning strategies are inquiry-based learning and pupil-centeredness. The teaching materials are a textbook, YouTube video, and Padlets. And for the learning assessment, it's based on the learning, written, and also oral assessment. The moral values of the lesson is to respect ourselves by expressing our emotions and feelings. So this is the lesson plan for metacognitive, and this is the attachments for listening activity and speaking activity.
Okay, so we will address the comment first of all from Mr. Battery Choco. Based on the lesson plan in the listening activity, how does it use metacognitive strategies? Okay, in the listening activities, we are focusing on tapping into student prior knowledge by introducing them into uh, a source that they already have experience with the topic, and then we support their thinking process by providing open-ended questions, so the student have to make their own judgment based on their thinking or their analysis that they found from the video. Okay, so for the second comment, I'll pass to the next presenter.
Okay, let's go to another question. What's the main focus of metacognitive approach in teaching? All right, the metacognitive approach is to encourage students to think about what they think, and it empowers students to think about their own thinking based on the provided materials. In the speaking activity of the lesson, in the step 4, teacher allows all students to rethink their answers based on the supported phrases by using the sentences provided in the column. So by related materials is a step to encourage students to rethink their answers and correct by themselves. And also, it also involves evaluation. In the post-lesson, teacher let students to complete a short reflection based on the topic. Evaluation to let students reflect on how well they met their learning objective after completing the lesson is a good way to practice their metacognitive skills. So yes, that's all the answers for the comments. I will pass to the next to present.
All right, so I'm going to continue with what is top-down lesson. So first of all, what is top-down? So a top-down teaching style focuses on providing students a large view of a subject, immersing them in the big picture without any explaining the component that make up the subject. For example, in an English English class, a top-down approach learning English immediately, including writing, reading, and pronunciation. So students would not be taught the intricacies of vowel, nouns, pronouns first. Instead, they would plunge into the totality of learning English and then gradually learn the building blocks that make up the English language. Okay. Now let's move on to the lesson plan of top-down approach. All right. All right, so our the theme of this lesson is science and technology, and the topic is Unit 5, Let Experiment from textbook Pulse Form 1. And then the focus skills of this approach is listening and speaking, and I'm going to focus today the grammar, which is the will and won't. All right, now next is the content standard. The main skill of this lesson is speaking. So the content standard will be 1.4, speak intelligibly, eloquently, and appropriately for different purposes, audience, context, and cultures. So the complementary skills of this lesson is listening, which is 1.2, listen to, engage, and interpret meaningful conversation. So the learning standard of this lesson is speaking, which 1.4.1, express feeling and give simple description of personal experiences orally. And then for complementary skill, listening is 1.2.2, listen to the text of different genres and classify the grammar items and vocabulary. All right, so next is the learning objective of this top-down approach. So by the end of the lesson, pupils will be able to rearrange sentences in correct order with will or won't in it. And next one is listen to the audio carefully and answer the worksheet. So the success criteria is the first one is for advanced student, which 25 out of 30 students able to rearrange sentences in correct order with will or won't in it. And the next learning objective for the advanced student is 25 out of 30 students able to listen to the audio carefully and answer the worksheet. Next is for intermediate student, which 15 out of 30 students able to rearrange sentences in correct order with will or won't in it. And the second learning objective will be 15 out of 30 students able to listen to the audio carefully and answer the worksheet. Last but not least is the weak student for an objective. The first one is 10 out of 30 students able to rearrange sentences in correct order with will or won't in it, and 10 out of 30 students able to listen to the audio carefully and answer the worksheet. So for the cross-curricular element is science and technology. And differentiation strategies, I chose strategy 4, which is differentiate by the outcome expected from pupils. All right, so moving on to our class activity. for pre-lesson, it's only 10 minutes, which the first one teacher will pace the conversation of two people on the whiteboard. This is to arouse the prior knowledge towards the topic. And then teacher will ask students to read the conversation and ask student question regarding the conversation. What do you see on the pictures? Will you help your friends in the science lab, or will you do any experiment today? And then after that, teacher will introduce the students to the topic. So for lesson development, it is a 40 minutes time. The first one is teacher before they do the activity, teacher first will briefly explain about will and want to the student in detail. So at least before they do the activity, student will know about what is will and want, how to use it, etc. And then teacher will ask three students to create sentences with will or want in it to see their understanding. So the first one is our speaking activity, which teacher will divide the student into two groups, and teacher distribute a Manila card that consists of 5 sentences that not in correct order to each group. And then teacher explain the instruction and demonstrate the activity to the students. So this is when the top-down approach happen. When the teacher first explain, demonstrate, give example to the students about the lesson that they're going to do today. And then teacher tells the student that the fastest group with the most completed sentences will win. So teacher give 10 minutes for the student to do the activity and ask student randomly to read on one sentences from the activity with the correct order. So moving on, our listening activity. Teacher distribute the worksheet to the student and open an audio and ask student to listen to the audio carefully, then answer the question in the worksheet. So teacher instruction would be, please listen to the audio carefully, answer the questions based on the audio. Then teacher asks the student to complete the worksheet in 10 minutes. Teacher called the student randomly to answer the questions and discuss if the student could not answer it correctly. So this one same goes to the speaking activity where teacher first will explain, give example, explanation, etc. to the students, and then after that, students will do the activity. So for post lesson, teacher choose student randomly to tell the users of will and want, and teacher recap and summarize the lesson for today. So for the heart in this lesson is the application, and teacher learning strategies is the cooperative and collaborative learning. Teaching material, I'm using the Pulse 2 textbook, worksheet, Canvas slide. So this one, everyone can, later I will introduce to the attachment, which is that used in these classes. And then learning assessment is listening assessment and oral assessment. So our moral value for this lesson is rationality, which are student able to form judgment. All right, so moving on to the teacher references. So this is all the material that I'm using during the lesson. So it's much more easier for students to get to know the topic for what we're going to learn today. All right, so now can we go to the questions? All right, so there's 2 questions in the top-down learning approach. So the first one is from Honey. What is the difference between top-down and bottom-up approach? Okay, this is a good example, good question actually, because people are confused with the bottom-up and top-down. So firstly is people need to know that bottom-up teaching start with the small details like vocab, word, or the step-by-step process of solving an algorithm. So as a student master these skills, teacher broadens the scope of the lesson to include a reading passage that uses the vocab word or to match worksheet requiring the student to apply the algorithm. While the top-down teaching is involved starting with the big abstract concept and working down to the specific detail. So for instance, you might demonstrate a chemical reaction to your students and then have them learn about the different molecule in each substance that resulted in the reaction. All right, so moving on to the next question. It's from Aina. How a teacher can apply top-down approach in teaching reading? Okay, this is also a good question. So it's simple. Rather than simply being able to read the words of an exercise page that is presented to them, top-down learning approach readers learned by reading actual text that they choose and begin to decode with the help of a teacher. So that's all from us. Thank you so much.